Hey everybody, Dave Hunt from GameMasters Guild here. Hey, this guy right here is a Heroclix miniature from the last video I did on selecting your miniature. He's pretty cool looking, he's kind of plain looking, and he's on that big 1.5" base. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some time now, get my pocket knife, and I'm going to pop him off that big 1.5" base. Now, you want to be very careful when popping these guys off their bases. This actually took me about 2 or 3 minutes to do, so I had to cut down the footage. And as you can see, my thumbs are in a spot where I could easily cut myself. Thankfully, with some difficulty, I was still able to get them off. A lot of times, these guys just pop right off. Now, sometimes they don't come off terribly clean. And as you can see with this one, I had to take and trim some of the little bits off the bottom of them. But that's no problem. And then, once I trimmed all this off, as you can see, I'm going to glue them to a 1-inch base. And real quick, we'll do a little change, and there he is. Okay, now I'm going to do a little bit of painting. I'm going to need pretty much a detail brush here and a larger dry brush. Just something to get some paint on. Use a paint pot, and you can use anything you want. You can even use the packaging that your miniature came in if you bought that, just like that right there. Now the first color I'm going to use some of this white. It's a off-white by Vallejo, but really any white's going to do. And I'm just going to basically squirt some of it in this little packaging tray here, pretending as if it came in one of those packages. I'm just going to take some of that white on my dry brush, and I'm just going to throw some white on them. And all I'm really doing with this guy is basically, I just want to give him some different color so he's not all red. Just a little more appealing to the eye. And what I do is once I put that paint in the clear plastic container, I get just enough on my brush to do the job that I need. And remember, whenever you're painting, basically you want to use the right tool for the right job. So the more paint that you're going to be applying, you want a larger brush. The lesser amount of paint you're going to be applying, you want a smaller brush. So the larger surface area that you're going to be painting, you're going to use a bigger brush. And if the surface area that you're going to be painting is smaller, then you're going to use a smaller brush. So here you can see that I'm just painting away with this white, just making it so he's not all red. And I'm not too worried about getting paint in places that, well, I don't want it, because I can always go back and touch them up later with a little bit of red. And I'm just looking at cool spots that I think I want to paint up. And I'm just getting that whole back sash right there, and I got his belt painted the same color. And I'll probably have to go back and maybe add a little bit of extra paint to this, just so that way the red doesn't come through. And I'm going to go get the front now. See, yep, I'm going to write this down the middle. I think I just want to do the very middle part, but then I decide, well, I think I'm going to go ahead and spread out that white cloth around him a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and paint a larger section white once I hit his belt here. I'll get his belt a little more. There we go. All right. Now I'm going to take my detail brush, and since I don't want to be too sloppy, I'm going to use this detail brush real quick to hit some of his belt right there, and to kind of finish off some of his sash down here. And remember, whenever you're painting, never be in a rush. Take your time. And really, this miniature, I probably could have painted him a little quicker than what I have in this video. Mostly I was trying to work around the camera, and I was trying to make sure I was getting the right shot in for you. And I'm also trying to do this without a lot of extra editing, so you can see more or less in real time how long it took me to modify this miniature. Honestly, you could probably shave about 5-10 minutes off of what I did right here, because the work is real simple and you can do it pretty fast. And once you do 2 or 3, you see how it works, and it's pretty easy. And if you get all these guys in an assembly line fashion, you can really crank them out. And what's nice is with these Heroclix or Mage Knight miniatures, a little bit of paint here and there and putting them on another base, you can fix them up real nice. Now I just showed the Gehenna's Gold by Games Workshop, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that and I'm going to add some extra detail to this character, and I'm going to paint his helmet. So instead of giving him just that straight red helmet, we use that Gehenna's Gold to make it really cool and kind of stand out. Why did I choose the gold? I don't know. I just thought it'd look cool. No particular reason. And I'm using that finer detail brush because even though it's a large surface area on his head, I'm worried with the big bristles on that brush, I may accidentally really overpaint and hit his shoulders or the sword. So I'm going to use that detail brush. And quite frankly, as you can see, the size of the brush in relation to his head, I can get quite a bit of paint on him and move it around pretty good where I need it. And wherever I see detail, I want to make sure I move that paint around and thin it out so it doesn't gob too much. Okay, I just cleaned out the brush a little bit, and that way I'm getting a little more paint on it. And I like to occasionally, in the middle of painting, stop, clean out my brush, because that paint does have a tendency to dry and stick your bristles together, or it gets, I won't say it doesn't necessarily dry, but it gets goopy before it dries, and your brush doesn't work as well, so I try to periodically clean out my brushes. And now I'm just still working on his head. I'm just touching up some little spots here and there. And while I'm painting, I'm really, at this point, I'm just enjoying it, laid back, kind of got a little zen thing going on, listen to some music. And as I paint, remember, less is more, so I try to put as little on as possible and then come back, and as areas dry, I put a little back over. If I can see some of that red coming through, then I'm definitely going to go back and kind of touch it up while I'm painting. And as you can see, while I'm working on his helmet, you can see that white sash around him. That came out pretty decent. It's pretty much what I was going for. And again, I wasn't looking for anything spectacular. I was looking for some contrast. Instead of him just being a red guy with a sword, now he's got some more detail, and people might want to pay attention to him a little more when I put him down on the board. There we go. That's not too bad. Wash out my brush again. And always I like to keep a paper towel handy to help dry off my brush a little bit. That's got a little extra stray hair there. All right. There we go. I think I got most of the detail on there. Doesn't look too bad. Okay, so now it's time to clean out my brush a little bit. I'm going to do that off camera. And I'm going to be looking for another paint. Morn Fang Brown. It's a base by Citadel. And all I'm really going to do with this is I'm going to paint two different items on them. And the first spot I'm going to paint is the handle on the sword. So I'm just going to do that with the brown, kind of just give it a, at first glance, give it a look that maybe it's wrapped in leather or some such. And this doesn't take me too long with that detail brush. Just kind of hit it, move the paint around a little bit. Trying to be careful with his hand. And again, don't worry if you overpaint, because you can always fix it. But if you can, try to be careful not to, because if you don't have to go touch up spots, then your painting is going to go even quicker. But again, don't sweat it. There we go. Got that painted. And now I'm going to get just a little more brown here, just off camera. Add a little more to my brush. And now I'm going to go and I'm just going to hit his shoes, because I don't think his shoes have to be the same color of his pants. So I'm just going to paint him just real quick brown, like he's got moccasins or something on. I don't know. Does it make much sense? I don't know. Doesn't really matter. He's a fantasy miniature. And again, I'm just trying to paint him to get him out and ready to play. But I still don't think it's too bad. Again, just little details, just so he's not all one color. And that's what I'm looking for. And don't get me wrong, you know, I like to take time with my miniatures, and I definitely like to add little details and make them look really, really good. But, you know, sometimes you just want to crank them out. And with this guy, that's all I'm doing. It's just adding detail to crank him out. He's not a super favorite miniature, you know, and basically I'm just using him right now, honestly, as a demo for you guys to kind of show you part of my process that I go through when I'm converting these miniatures. But again, I don't think he looks too bad. And I'm going to touch up his grip a little bit here with some of that brown paint. It's not too bad. Kind of think I might want to paint his arms, but I don't know. I don't want to go overboard and go really crazy and paint too much. Just enough. I think that's going to pretty well do it for that. Let's see. We'll get in here. maybe some finishing touches. Yeah, we'll get back in here again and hit some of this white. You can see some of the red kind of shining through there because the white paint is really thin. So we're just going to add a little more white, cover that up. And that's the problem when you're putting lighter colors over dark. That dark can show through pretty easy, or honestly any color. So sometimes you have to make an extra coat or two, which isn't too bad. And as you can see, I already painted the white on there once, and then I went and painted his helmet, painted his part of his sword, painted his shoes, and then I can come back and the rest of the paint's already dry. And quite frankly, that paint's been dry enough, and I could have gone back much earlier and added some of this white paint. Another reason I like to convert these miniatures is I don't need a lot of extra paint, or if you don't have a lot of extra paint to paint miniatures, this is a great way to get a finished miniature out on the table with a little amount of paint. And inevitably, even if once I'm done with this video, I could pick this guy back up and see a couple other spots I'd probably want to go touch up. Yep, there we go. You always want to be careful about the detail. Make sure you don't cover up too much of it, because you still want that detail to show through the color. And the detail, whenever anybody refers to detail in their video, they're talking about all those extra fine lines and grooves that help define the miniature. And basically what you don't want to do is you don't want to block those out by having too much paint, because you can have too much paint on a miniature and it can dry, and then what happens is once it dries, you can have a big gob of it and it can completely wipe out a detail, and you don't want to do that. So right now I'm going to clean out my brush a little bit, and you can kind of see it there. I took my brush and I pulled it through the paper towel in such a manner to where I could keep the bristles together and twist them tight. Now I'm going to put a little more white paint on my brush, and this time I'm going to paint the looks like the cloth bit he's got around his neck there. I don't know exactly what you call that, an ascot or a scarf. I'm not exactly sure what, but I don't know, for some reason I just kind of feel like it need a little extra color on him, so we'll just put some white there around that. Now this area, a lot of focus here, but it's a tighter area because it's right around his neck, and it's definitely not as big as when I'm painting that lower sash that's around him. There we go. You can kind of see how it's coming now. And I am trying to be careful not to accidentally paint on his helmet or to get any on the sword, because if I don't have to go back and touch up, I won't. And here I'll have to. Looks like I got a little white on him, but that's okay. Inevitably, you're going to get color in spots where you just don't want it, and it is easy enough to go back and fix it. It's not too bad there. Okay, and taking this pencil here, and I'm just kind of scraping just a little bit of this paint away. Kind of an unconventional tool, but just something I had handy, and it just kind of worked all right. There we go. See, that's not too bad. And see, already he's really become a different miniature already with just a little bit of work I've done. And we're only at about the 14-minute mark here in this video, and we've already done quite a bit to this guy, and he really kind of stands out. And I like that. He's really kind of become more of an individual instead of just a molded piece of plastic with color, with one color on him, or two colors, I guess, since the sword was silver. And you could even take that silver gray that the sword is and use a different silver to paint over that. Now, a lot of people are going to wonder why I didn't just prime this guy and just start from scratch. Well, quite frankly, I felt it wasn't necessary. And there are some models where I've done that. I've primed and started to paint from scratch. But in this case, I just wanted something quick. And in this particular miniature, I'm not even going to bother to seal with a varnish. And most of my models I don't. Just because I don't, even though I play a lot, I don't seem to really need to worry about going back and varnishing my models. They just don't get beat up enough for me to worry about. Now, I do have a lot of pre-painted miniatures, and that's probably part of it. I'm just saving myself time by not priming this guy so I can paint him from scratch. I just don't see the need in some instances. Now there's going to be other times where I'm totally going to prime the miniature and start from scratch because either he's a brand new model or it's something that I really have a vision on. But don't feel like you have to do the same thing for each and every single miniature that you do. Now, like I said, I don't usually spray varnish any of my stuff, and a spray varnish keeps the paint from coming off and getting chipped. And it's a really good thing to do. Oh, now here, I just going to use some Evil Sunz Scarlet, some red. It's the closest thing I could find to his original color. And so basically I'm just going to go and touch up some of the paint that I got, some of the white paint that I got on his uniform to make it a little bit better. Now if later I added some more detail to him, or for whatever reason this model became a more important miniature for me, well then I might take some time out and hit him with a good varnish and make sure that paint and coloration stays over time. But again, I don't worry too much about it. But that's just me. I'm very general and very laid back when it comes to painting and how I take care of my models. And you should take care of your models. And I don't abuse them, but at the same time, I don't feel that I need personally the extra steps. But again, completely personal choice. The more you do for your miniatures, the better off they're going to be. The more time you take, the more detail you're going to get. If you add a spray varnish, then they're going to stay nicer, longer. It all makes a difference. It just depends on what level you want to put into it. And this right here, I'm just showing you the very basic, just the minimum amount of work that you need to put into a miniature to make them something a little bit different. You don't need to spend 4 hours painting this one guy. No, not at all, especially when you got 20 or 30 of them to paint. Now, nothing says you can't go back later and touch them up and give them even more detail. But if you just want to get some guys ready for this weekend's game, so that way instead of a bunch of gray nothings or a bunch of blobs of pre-manufactured molded miniatures, you can have something just a little bit different, something a little more colorful out there on the table. And that's what I'm doing, just showing you that you don't need to do a lot to make it look good. And here I'm just cleaning up all the lines, and in a couple spots I decided to go ahead and take some of that red and just kind of hit them in other spots where the red is, even though I'm not correcting anything. Just putting some of that extra coloration on there just to give his red uniform some more definition with the different color or the different shade of red that I've got. See, I'm just going to paint some on there. I'm not worried about covering the whole thing, just kind of hitting some spots, kind of like a highlight. That's all I'm really doing. There we go, just a couple spots here and there, and that's not too bad. I'm actually pretty happy how this guy came out. And again, minimal amount of effort. And again, if I wasn't taking the time to actually film myself painting this guy for you, this would actually have already been done by now. It'd be pretty easy to paint him and have him out and ready for game. And hopefully you won't be too harsh on me. This is my first actual video on painting a miniature, so hopefully the other ones I'll do, I'll get a little better as I get used to doing them. And hopefully I can fix that camera blurriness. But I do appreciate you sticking with me through this. So at this point, this guy is pretty much done. Even though I've taken some time to put some extra red on him, I really didn't even need to do that. So you could easily shave off a couple more minutes right there on painting this guy. But this video, I just really wanted to take my time and show you how easy it is to take a Heroclix miniature, and with about 15-20 minutes, you can pop them off that large base, put them on a smaller base, throw some paint on him, and now suddenly he's a completely different character and he's ready for gameplay. And you could easily spend an hour, do 2 or 3 of these guys, and next thing you know, you're going to want to paint more. And all I'm going to do here is not completely satisfied, so I decided to get some more of that Guinness Gold And I'm basically going to paint the guard of his sword right there, just because I can. Yeah, it just kind of got hooked into it a little bit. Kind of matches his helmet a little bit. But at this point, I'm pretty much done with the video. And as you can see, I think overall that the Advocate, as he used to be called as a Heroclix miniature, came out pretty good. Now he's a sweet samurai warrior for any of your fantasy games. So I think overall, not too bad. And again, remember, it doesn't take much. If you don't think you can paint, well, you're wrong. You most assuredly can paint. And if you're in the area, if you're cutting through Crestview, Florida, be sure to come by our shop. We're at 743 Ashley Drive, located south of the interstate in Crestview, Florida. And if you need some help and I got some time, I'd be happy to quick show you some of these techniques right in the store. Again, it's pretty easy to do, and you don't have to be a master painter to do it. I think he came out pretty good, and he's ready for the table. Is he going to win any art competitions? Absolutely not, but he's painted, and he's not all one color, and that's what I'm going for. So, again, I'm Dave Hunt, owner of GameMasters Guild. I'd like to thank you for stopping in and checking out my video on converting a Heroclix miniature. So I want you guys to stay safe, play great games, and I'll see you real soon. Yeah.